You're tuned to KSQM 91.5 SQM.
And it is straight up 9 o'clock, and you are tuned to KSQM 91.5. I'm Sassy Susan, and we are here with Gardening with Ciscoe.
It's Gardening with Ciscoe. Dust off your trowels and connect your garden hoses. It's time for an hour of cultivated fun. Let's join Sassy Susan as she welcomes Ciscoe Morris.
Ciscoe kid was a friend of mine. Ciscoe kid was a
Well, good morning, Ciscoe. How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great, Sassy Susan. How are you doing? It's so fun
Well,
having this be Pet Lovers Week.
I know, and we have some great questions about pets, but you know, it was so nice to see the mountains today. As I was driving in, I could actually see the mountains.
Well, you know, and my dogs, Izzy and Leo, have been going nuts because they have been getting their normal walks, you know, and they've just been. The fun thing is they've been playing a lot in the house because they're so bored, you know. So that's been a good thing to watch. But, oh, man, it's nice to be able to take them out on their normal walks again. Oh,
Yeah. Well, Don was going to be taking Thor for a walk this morning. Thor got so excited because he saw me put my shoes on, and I'm going, baby, I'm not going for a walk with you today. You're going with the guy. But I did want to share with you it's been interesting because some friends of mine were planting some trees the other day, and I said, is that hole too deep? You don't want to plant it too deep. And then I said, oh, you don't want to put mulch up close to the trunk. You got to keep the mulch away from it. And then I said, what was the other thing? And they said, okay, Ciscoe, we got it. So, you know.
Oh, I love it.
Even
I told you, you're going to become a super gardener.
Well, even though I am not a gardener, you know, just by osmosis, I'm learning all this stuff. You know, I know the other thing. I said, you need to make, it looks like it's root bound. You need to cut the roots so they looked at me and they went, okay, Ciscoe. You need to keep on with. So we had a good chuckle out of that, but
well, hey, I want to tell a little story about one of my dogs because it's Pet Weekend.
Okay,
I thought would be fun to share.
Perfect.
So we used to have a 94-pound half hound dog named Goldie, and she was the most beautiful dog. Her fur looked like a deer, you know. And so I don't know if you know it, but in Seattle, you're allowed to bring your dog on the bus as long as the bus driver feels that the dog is safe, you know. And so it happened when I was working at Seattle U. I had Goldie with me there. She came to work every day with me, and I get a call from my wife, Mary, saying, I got to come get the car. I got this thing I have to do. So I said, okay, I'll take the bus home with Goldie. So the bus driver's very nice. You have to pay for your dog coming on for one seat. So Goldie, I paid for Goldie. The bus driver's very nice. So it's hardly anybody on the bus. We walked downtown and got on. Well, it was rush hour. Pretty soon, the bus was just packed. Goldie was laying right in the middle of the walkway. People are walking around my 94-pound hound dog trying to get to the back of the bus. Totally packed. And we're riding along, and all of a sudden I hear everybody, like, shuffling their feet. A lot of people are shuffling their feet, mainly women. And I was wondering, what is going on? Well, a lot of those women, it was a summer day, and they had sandals on, or they had those kind of shoes where your toes stick out the end, you know?
Uh-huh.
And Goldie was licking everybody's toes. I'm a kind of embarrassment.
They were thinking maybe you weren't feeding her. Maybe Goldie was hungry.
Maybe that was it. Hey, by the way, on my website at Ciscoe.com, never forget that E at Ciscoe.
That's right.
CISCOE, in our dogs page. So we have a dog page in there. You can see all my puppies and everything. But Mary put 3 new pictures on our dog page that are just so fun. So you got to check those out, whatever you do, everybody listening. You'll love them.
Okay. Well, are you ready for some pet questions?
I am ready. I will not be stumped.
Okay, so since this is Pet Week, well, let me just, right now in Sequim it is 61 degrees, 91% humidity. Wind is out of the, looks like the north at 3 to 4. And so it was nice to see the mountains this morning. So let's
fresh air.
Yeah, fresh air is so nice. Okay, so let's see. Is there a way to keep the squirrels from eating my tulip and crocus bulbs?
Oh, man. I get that question so often because squirrels are really bad. And those are the 2 bulbs they like to eat. They don't eat hardly any other kind of bulbs. But they're crazy for tulips and crocus. At Seattle University, I planted 250 crocus bulbs on one side of the road. In spring, almost every one of them came up on the other side of the road. The squirrels are so dumb, they forget where they put the things, So here's a couple of tricks. First of all, tulips don't come back quite often. I get a lot of people always ask me, how come my tulips don't come back? They don't really like our climate. Tulips come from the Stan countries, Uzbekistan, Turkestan, all those stands.
The Stan countries. That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, and they come from way high in the mountains, and they're covered with 30 feet of snow all winter long. So they're not really getting wet. They're in a blanket. It's kind of an insulating blanket. Here, what do we get? Especially, not so bad in Sequim, because you don't get as much rain over there. But like in the Seattle area and most of Western Washington, we get so much rain in the winter, and it's constantly coming down. And it rots the tulips, because they're not used to it. Other bulbs can take it better. Crocus take it all right, but so they tend to rot, or they divide because they think they're going to divide, and then that wipes out the mother. She's never going to bloom again, and the little babies never make it to adulthood. So here's a big tip. If you have good soil, plant your tulips 12 inches deep. Now, you have to have well-drained soil. If you do this in clay, they'll just rot down there. But if you plant your tulips 12 inches deep, the squirrels don't have a chance to get to them. The other thing is that they just don't tend to divide down there. I don't know exactly why. Maybe the moisture stays up higher in the soil. And almost always, if you could plant and this only works with the bigger tulips, like Darwin hybrids and some of those. So, but if you plant them 12 inches deep, we did this at Seattle U where I worked, and I do it at home. My tulips come back about 10 years in a row, almost every one of them. So it's great now. But get this, I was working in my office, and I'm looking out the window, and I'm seeing where my tulips are coming up out there. This is in the spring, a couple of years ago. I see where the tulip buds are starting to come out of the ground. I see these squirrels start biting off the buds. I think they were doing it just for spite because they weren't eating them. And I was so mad. So what I did was I made a hot sauce. So one of the hottest peppers we can get on earth are ghost peppers. So you can buy ghost pepper sauce. And I just take enough. I add just enough water with it in a spritzer bottle so that I can make sure it'll spray, and you got to guard your eyes. You do not want to get hot pepper sauce in your eyes.
No, that would not be good.
No. So I went out there and I sprayed it on those buds, and then I watched, and it was so fun. You should have seen the look on those squirrels when they took a bite of one of those buds. It was like I heard it yell, "Ah!" It goes shooting through the backyard. Word of all mammals on Earth, humans are the only ones that like hot pepper. All other mammals hate hot pepper. Birds love it. So you could put hot pepper in your bird seed, and the squirrels will stop eating it. But you got to put quite a bit of it in there. But so if you, right when you plant your crocus, because you can't plant crocus deep. They can only be 3 times the diameter of the bulb deep, or they won't come up. So when you plant them, wear rubber gloves, give them a squirt of hot pepper sauce, put them in there, and then you also can, squirt the ground with some hot pepper sauce, because it's usually right after you plant the bulbs that the squirrels are after them. So,
well, that's because the ground is soft. They can get to them easier.
Yep, and they know. They know you did something different. I think they just sit up in those little nests and watch what I'm doing. Go, oh, how can I drive nuts this week? So
okay.
So that really will help.
So that'll help with tulip and crocus bulbs. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, there's 2 questions that are kind of related. My dogs love to dig in my back lawn. Is beginning to look like a moonscape. And is there a way to stop them from digging holes? And along with that, how do you keep them from digging in a vegetable patch? So those are kind of related.
Yeah, they are. Well, I'll never forget. So most of the dogs that Mary and I have had, we found some. But most of the dogs that we've had came from a puppy rescue. And we usually have 2 dogs at a time. But I remember when we brought little Fred home. Fred was the cutest little guy you've ever seen. He was only about 8 inches long, And we bring him home, put him on the ground. Before we could move, he ran into our vegetable patch. We had this big stand of peas. They were flying in the air before I could even get in there. He dug so fast he went out of sight into the ground, That soft vegetable garden was perfect for him. First, this is a really big tip. If you're going to get a puppy or a dog, and you're, sometimes you find a dog and you don't have time hardly to make adjustments. But so like before we brought Fred home, what I should have done was decided, where am I going to allow this dog to go? And where I don't want him to go, put up fences.
Yeah.
So in my backyard, I have this really beautiful wood fence that has horizontal rails, and it's got. I'm just looking out the window. It's got 6 of them. They're about 6 inches apart, and the fence is only about 3.5 feet tall. That works like a charm. They never go in any of those areas. They could jump that fence, but I quickly trained them not to, and it was no problem. So put up a fence before you bring the puppy home. But there is another problem, and that's the lawn, So Izzy and Leo, they play together. They love to dig in the lawn, and it drives me nuts, So we've had to do a few things. One thing you could do wherever they're digging, you go yell at them as if it's going to do any good.
It makes you feel better.
Yeah, it does. It makes you think you're trying to do something. And we throw tomato cages. We have these ones that fold up flat. So we throw those over the area they're digging, and then they don't like digging where there's those metal cages. But there is a trick, and we did this more with Fred, because Fred was the biggest digging dog we've ever had. You couldn't stop him. So what you do is you take like a soda can or a beer can, whatever you've got around there, and you stick 16 pennies in it. Now, I don't know why they say 16 16 pennies, but that seems to be the magic number. And so when the dog's out there digging, you shake the can, and it freaks them out, and you throw it down in the hole where they're digging. And they don't like that. They hate that for some reason. So anywhere the dog's digging, I'd throw a can with those pennies in. Now, it worked pretty good. The only problem was Fred just kept digging in a new spot. Pretty soon, our whole back lawn looked like a recycling center. There was like 20 cans back there. It didn't really work.
I thought you were going to say you buried the can with 16 pennies in it, and I'm going, what? How would that help? But you just shake the can with 16 pennies and put it in the hole that the dog has been digging? Okay.
Yep, and they won't dig that hole again. They'll just go find a new spot to dig.
Well, I know Thor has a place that he loves to dig. It's sandy. And I told my husband this morning, you might have to put some of that sand back in the hole because who knows how deep it's going to get. I certainly don't want to get a lawnmower tire stuck in there. I'd have to pick it out.
Yeah. So what kind of dog? Is it Thor?
Thor, Thor. He's a Marama. He's bred to guard sheep, but instead he guards us. So he's...
you know what? I had two dogs when I was growing up named Thor.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were both black labs.
Yeah, no, he's 123 pounds of white love.
Oh,
so,
wow, that's a honker.
Yeah. So, okay, let's. Here's another dog question: is cocoa mulch safe to use around dogs?
That's a great question. And okay, so cocoa mulch is left over. They make cocoa, and the problem is anybody that has dogs knows, and I'm glad this question came up because people that don't have dogs need to know about this too, and that is that chocolate is very dangerous for dogs. It's poison to them. Grapes are too, which I didn't know until my dog ate a bunch.
I didn't know. Yeah. Huh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it can affect their kidneys, and it only affects some dogs, not all. And our dog ate a whole thing of grapes, and $2,000 later, she's in good shape. That's all I know. She lived, but she had to go
the
to
things
the
we do
doctor.
for our dogs.
Oh my God! But so chocolate is very poison to dogs, and that was a big problem for me when I ran the grounds at CLU because I always brought my dogs and. Students would give the dogs anything, and I remember a woman gave my dog about 25 M&Ms once, and I was, you can't yell at a student.
Yeah.
You'll get fired, but I was like, don't you realize this? She just didn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be bad for the dog's teeth if nothing else, but it's dark chocolate that's the worst, and that's what cocoa mulch can have in it, that same thing that's in dark chocolate. Now, so there are some cocoa mulches that they say are pet friendly. They advertise themselves as pet friendly, and it's real pretty. It smells good. It's a dark color. It makes a nice mulch. But they say there's absolutely none of that chocolate stuff in it. But if it were me and I have pups, I don't use cocoa mulch. I'd rather use something else and play it safe. Why take a chance?
Yeah.
Maybe they'd goof and accidentally some of the chocolate would get in there or something. So I'd say don't use that stuff if you have dogs.
Well, that leads me, there's another question that was right above this one, and they said if they get rid of their dogs have made trails and mud patches in the lawn. If I get rid of the lawn, what would be a good mulch to use in its place? Okay, cocoa mulch is not good to use, so what should they use?
Well, I've seen people use a lot of different things, those big wood chips, but that doesn't really work very well. Wood chips from the arborists, they're too sharp, and the dogs end up chewing all these sticks in there all the time. My personal opinion is there's only one living ground cover that people and dogs can walk on, and it's lawn. All those other ones, steppables and everything, they they get wiped out really fast if you put them down. I don't know of any mulch that I really like for dogs that much. So at least to replace a lawn, big area. So my opinion would be if it's an area where the dogs hang out all the time, keep the lawn. Yes, you're going to have mud in the house sometimes on rainy days, you know. And yes, you're going to have big trails through it. But as the dogs get older, you can reseed a little, or, you know, the grass comes back. And, hey, we love our dogs so much. Let them have the lawn. They love it. They like to lie on it. They like to play on it. And they're only going to wreck certain areas, so don't worry about it.
And then they look at you with those big brown eyes, and they say, Dad, I love you so much. You're the best ever. And then you go, okay, so you made some trails, so I have to wipe your feet off.
Yeah, so you ate 6 houses. So you bit 6 holes right through the wall of our house. That's what Izzy did to us. She bit 6 holes right through the wall of the house.
Oh my!
I don't know why she did that.
Well, since we're talking about lawn, someone has a question. How do you fix urine spots on a lawn?
Well, here's another one where I'm gonna say the dogs get the win on this. So if you've got, you can fix it if you have a male dog. Because what I recommend for a male dog, because, you know, they like to lift their legs on something, put a couple of junipers in your garden surrounding your lawn. They love peeing on juniper. So just put in a couple of sacrificial junipers. Who cares what happens to them, you know? But with a female dog, they're going to go on your lawn a lot. And if you're really a lawn aficionado and don't want those spots, you got to be out there every time you let the dog into the back garden or into the back lawn. You got to be out there with your hose and a nozzle or a watering can. And the minute they go, you got to, put a bunch of water on there to dilute the effect, because it's basically, it's way too much fertilizer going on one spot is what it is. It's full of nitrogen salts and things and urea, and that's too powerful. It burns the grass.
So who's a slave to who in that case?
Exactly. So, you know, I'm looking out the window and I'm seeing so many spots out there, but I've gotten used to it. And we have a lot of tours of our garden, but, you know, people, I just go, well, I love my dog. And, you know, that's the way it is. One thing that helps, walk your dogs a lot. Then they'll pee on somebody else's lawn instead of yours.
Okay, I don't think your neighbors are going to want to hear that one.
Oh, I hope they're not listening this morning.
Well, let's give equal time to cats. I'm a dog person, but I know that there's cat lovers out there. So, what are plants to look out for if you have an indoor cat? So, we're talking about house plants, probably. What are some house plants that you need to be careful of?
Number one house plant. Don't ever bring a lily into your house if you have a cat.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, if you have a cat that goes outside and you're growing lilies, that's dangerous too. For some reason, cats sometimes eat lilies, and when they do, a lot of times that's the end of your cat. They're pretty deadly to cats. So, you know, for Easter or whatever, don't bring Easter lilies into the house, anything like that.
So are you talking about the flower or the leaves?
You know, I'm not absolutely positive which part they eat.
Okay.
But I think all parts of a lily are very dangerous to a cat. But now so that's a big one. Now the other ones are plants that we pretty much recognize poison to people as well as to cats. And even a dog, you would never want to chew on it. So one is Sansevieria. And Sansevieria, it's got a couple of names, but one of them is mother-in-law's tongue. And this plant is famous for, if you chew it, it totally paralyzes your tongue and you can't talk. So why it got that name, I don't know.
Huh, okay.
But yeah, so it wouldn't be good if your cat chewed that at all, you know. And I've heard that they do that. So that's Sansevieria. Another one, I'm trying to think of the name of the thing. Oh, geez, all of a sudden the name is, hey, Mary, what's that other one that's poison? Dieffenbachia, thanks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Dieffenbachia, I can't remember the common name for that thing, but that one has the same kind of qualities. It paralyzes your mouth if you eat it, and your tongue can swell up and you can't breathe. So that's another one that I'd be really careful about. We've had a lot of cats over the years, but we don't have one right now. But if I were about to get a cat, which would be insane with 2 dogs,
yeah.
but if I were, and anyone out there that's about to, I would ask your vet for the list of houseplants that are poison to cats, because there are probably some others on there that I don't know about. And, you know, you want to play it safe, because cats get kind of bored in the house.
Yeah.
And they start looking for something to do, and there's a good chance they're going to chew on a plant. So.
Okay, well, let's go to a song, and that when we come back, you can do your plant of the week. How's that?
All right.
Okay,
cool.
So right now it's 27 minutes past 9. You're tuned to KSQM 91.5. We are doing the Gardening with Ciscoe show. I'm Sassy Susan, and Ciscoe is with us on the phone. But right now we're going to hear from Sam, the Sham, and the Pharaohs, Woolly Bully, KSQM 91.5.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, so that was Sam, the Sham, and the Pharaohs, Woolly Bully. Okay, can you hear me, Ciscoe?
Yeah, you betcha.
Okay. I'm having a hard time. We're adjusting. Jeff has been adjusting the volume. I have a tendency to talk really loud, and so we tried to make some adjustments while that song was playing. So hopefully that'll be better. Okay, so right now it's 30 minutes past 9. You're tuned to KSQM 91.5, and we're here with Gardening with Ciscoe. So what's your plant of the week, Ciscoe?
Okay, I picked a really special plant of the week for Pet Lovers Weekend. So it's a dogwood tree. So there's a picture right on the front page of Ciscoe.com, Ciscoe.com, and the plant I picked is Cornus. Cornus is the botanical name for dogwoods. So it's Cornus sanguinea, which means red, and it's midwinter fire. So this is a red twig dogwood.
Oh, that sounds pretty.
Oh, it's really pretty. So it has kind of the bottom of the leaves are bright red. Not the leaves, the twigs in the winter are bright red after the leaves fall, and then the top turns to this beautiful golden orange, and the contrast is spectacular. It looks like it's on fire out in your garden. And the trick with red twig dogwoods, by the way, if you have deer love red twig dogwoods. So they'll prune it for you, but nothing kills these. And so what you do with these is you let them grow in summer, and they have pretty green leaves, and they might get some berries that feed the birds. But then every spring, when the new growth starts, you cut them down to 4 inches from the ground. The reason you do that is you don't have to do it, but the reason I always do it is because you won't get the colorful stems if you don't do that. It'll become an 18 feet tall little tree. It'll feed a lot of birds and everything because it'll get more berries that way, but I cut it down to 4 inches every spring, and when it grows back then, it's only the new twigs that get the color. So oh, they're just an explosion of color, and they only grow about 4 feet tall if you do that every spring.
Oh, well, that's good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's really great, and they slowly spread on underground stolons, but they don't take over your garden ever or anything like that. It's a wonderful, easy to grow plant.
Well, I think that that's an appropriate plant to have for the plant of the week, since it is Pet Lovers Weekend, the dogwood tree. Yes. Okay, well, let's do Rick Perry, a station ID, and then we'll get back to the question.
You're tuned to 91.5 KSQM Squim.
Okay, we got to keep the FCC happy so that everyone
Oh,
knows
yeah.
what they're tuned to. All right, so let's see. What are some poisonous decorative plants to avoid planting that you regularly see in the backyards? We talked about no lilies and no mother-in-law tongue, but are there any other decorative plants that you might inadvertently
yeah.
put in your yard?
You know, it's kind of interesting because there are so many plants that are potentially poison to dogs or cats out there. But the thing is, I've talked to my vet about this a lot, and basically she's told me that they rarely see serious dog poisonings. Cats, they see with lilies, but that's about it. But so it's rare that pets are going to eat enough of a plant in your garden to get sick. But there are a few that you really want to watch out for. One is Calmia. If you don't know Calmia, it's a relative, it's an East Coast relative of our rhododendron. And it gets these flowers, really pretty flowers that look like colorful buttons, I'd say. But so don't stick a Calmia if you got bringing home a new puppy and you got a Calmia right where the puppy's going to be playing all the time, move that Calmia to a spot the puppy won't be. Another one is Aconitum. I'll bet you've probably heard of this, Susan, because it's a really famous poison plant. It's kind of a relative of Delphinium. Delphinium's poison too, but not near as poisonous. And Aconitum has been used to dispatch all kinds of people in history, you know. And so you definitely don't want that out in your garden for anything where the pup can go.
Yeah.
And, you know, another one that's kind of big is a yew tree. So yew trees, we see them all over. There's native ones to Washington. They get red berries on them. They're one of the few conifers that can take shade really well. We have a million of them in our garden, but not where the pups can easily get at them, because all parts of the yew are very poison. Like farmers never want a yew anywhere near their cattle, anything like that. Interestingly, on the berry of yew, the actual fruit, it's called a drupe. The fruit is totally non-poison, edible, and even good for you. I'm not recommending people eat them, but it's the seed that's in there is very poisonous. I mean, it would take hardly, one seed might do you in. So,
Now you're talking about from the yew tree?
yeah,
Okay,
from the yew
okay,
tree.
okay.
Yeah, so, you know, we have some yew trees in the front, but now our pups have got older. They rarely ever eat plants anymore. It's usually when they're young they cause all that trouble. So, but that would be a big one. You know, hydrangea is poison, but it's not that poison. And so when we first brought Izzy home, I noticed Izzy was chewing on a hydrangea in one of my gardens, but it was in a really key spot. I didn't want to get rid of the hydrangea. So what I did was I got some of that bitter apple that you could buy at the vet, and it's got that Bitex in it, that stuff that keeps kids from sucking their thumbs, you know. And so I knew the minute I let little Izzy out, she was going to chew on that hydrangea. So right before I let her out, I sprayed a ton of that bitter apple on my hydrangea. Then I let Izzy out. She took one bite. You have never seen a look on a dog's face like that. It was like, "Wah!" So she never, ever touched that hydrangea again. So sometimes you can get away with little tricks like
Yeah.
that. So,
Yeah.
so just jasmine's another one. Watch out for jasmine. And bulbs, don't let bulbs sit around. So, you know, if you've been planting narcissus, daffodils, you know, those are pretty poisonous to anybody. So you don't want those, you know, those bulbs sitting there above ground. If you forget to plant some and they're sitting on the ground where I mean, it's kind of the shape of a ball. Lots of things could go wrong. So don't leave bulbs sitting around. If you plant them, that's one thing. But don't let the bulbs sit on top of the ground when your dog comes out to play.
Okay. Well, when I was coming into the studio today, there were 3 animals that had been reunited from Pet Posse. So that's so rewarding. So we try to get the word out as soon as we can to get these animals back home.
We need Pet Posse here in Seattle. I'll tell you what, that's a wonderful service.
It's all donation supported. It's a nonprofit. It's a wonderful organization. So we do what we can to reunite those animals. Well, here's one that I'm sure that you're asked a lot. Is it even possible to keep deer out of my garden?
Oh la la, deer are so hard to deal with. You know, I am so lucky. In my whole gardening life, which has been going on forever, I've never had to battle deer. But I did some experiments because on a radio show I had years ago, a woman called up and said, "How do you keep deer out of your garden?" You know, the only guaranteed way to keep deer out of your garden is to put up a fence, and a deer fence has to be 6 feet tall. And if it's at the bottom of a hill or something, then it's got to be 8 feet tall. And but she said, "Hey, I live in this golf course area that we're not allowed to put up fences." And so I told her, "Well, you could try some of these repellents, and some of them do work good if you apply them often enough. And it's way more than it says on the label, you know. But you know, I told her, really, you know, the repellents, people forget to reapply them, or it rains a lot, and then the deer come right through." So she was really frustrated and hung up. The next caller calls up and goes, "You didn't tell her how to get rid of deer right." I said, "Well, how do you do it?" She goes, "You got to use coyote pee." I went, "Well, how do they get the pee out of the coyote
pee?
You know? Yeah. She said, "I don't know how they get it, but this stuff works. I'm sending you a bottle." Well, I put this coyote pee all over this woman. You get these golf tees with a little sponge glued on top, and you dip it in there, and then you put it around the perimeter of the property. I tested it at this woman's house in Issaquah, and you know, so the deer are supposed to think that coyotes are marking their territory. They're afraid of coyotes, should keep them out. Well, about 3 days later, I get a call from Mabel, the woman whose house I did the experiment. She goes, "Get out here and get these coyote peas out of my garden now!" And I'm like, "Oh, la la." So all the way driving to Issaquah, I thought, why is she so upset? I still don't know how they get the pee out of the coyote, but I do know it comes from coyotes that are in heat.
Oh.
Oh yeah, it didn't attract coyotes to her garden, but she had about 6 male dogs hanging around. And they wouldn't go. I chased them. I yelled at them. They knew she was there. They were staying. And not only that, they sang love songs all night long.
Oh, they wanted to breed.
Yeah. Oh, it was terrible.
Oh, my.
Mabel's still mad at me to this day, you know. And not only that, I called her up a week later, and I said, "Mabel, I know I caused a little problems for you." She goes, "Listen, oh, they're still out there, you know." I said, "Well, tell me one thing. When I had those coyote sticks out there, did it stop the deer from coming through and eating your perennials and roses?" She goes, "No, they came right past the coyote sticks, ate all my favorite plants, I said, that's impossible. There were 6 big dogs back there. She goes, those dogs couldn't have cared less. They were in love. So, all I can tell you,
Okay.
don't try coyote pee. But, but some of the repellents, like Bobex is a good one. There's liquid fence. Some of these work pretty good, but you really do have to reapply them way before it says on the label.
Yeah.
So, hey, there is one other thing I should mention for you deer, people who are fighting deer. There's something called a scarecrow. This is pretty cool. So what this is, it's a tool. It's got this plastic head on the top and a metal tube that goes down. You attach your hose to the tube, and then in the head, it has a motion and heat detector and batteries in there, and it stands guard out in your garden, and if it detects an intruder coming in, it blasts them with a 35-foot shot of water, reloads, and gets ready to fire again. And
Well, that's pretty high tech.
Oh, it's high tech, and I've tested these a lot. In fact, I tested it on my dog, Cokie, and I used to take the Seattle U with me. And I had one at Seattle U that I was just experimenting with. They sent me one, and I just had to hold that in the air. My dog, Cokie, ran for the hills because I tested it on her so often. but the problem is there's a couple of problems with them. Number one, they can't see into the sun too well, so you're going to have to move it now and then. So this works better for someone that's at home during the day.
Yeah.
And the deer kind of figure out where they are, so they circumvent them. So you got to. So for a 500 square foot garden, you probably need 4 or 5 of them out there, and they cost about. The cheapest I've ever seen them is about $80 a piece. So
we're talking bucks.
Yeah, you're talking bucks. But a friend of mine that lives in Olympia right on a deer run, she has been using them for almost 10 years now, and she gets no deer damage at all, and she's a big perennial rose grower because deer love roses. Mm-hmm. So if you're home, you can move them and, have enough of them. They do work, but I got to tell you, people use them to keep the raccoons from eating their koi too. And I talked to a young couple the other day, and they said they were using them in their koi ponds, and it was keeping the raccoons out of there really well. And then winter came, and they heard it was going to freeze, and they thought that might wreck those expensive tools if the water in them, got frozen. So they took them all and put them in their garage. The next morning, not one koi left.
The raccoons were waiting.
Raccoons are way too smart.
Well, let's, I've got a 1-minute thing here about a pet story. So since it is pet weekend, let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll get back to our questions. Okay, Ciscoe?
Super.
Okay.
Pet Posse had an interesting case last June. Kaya, an adorable 1-year-old French bulldog, went missing from Sequim on June 8th. The trail went cold right away with no sightings or information. But on July 6th, a cute French bulldog was found in Port Angeles and was reported to Pet Posse. They posted the information, but had a nagging feeling and scanned old cases, and bingo, there she was. So a month after she went missing in Sequim, she showed up in Port Angeles and was happily reunited with her owner. If you would like to help support Pet Posse, check out their website at portangelespetposse.com. As a 501c3 nonprofit, Pet Posse relies on sponsorships and donations to fund their programs, services, and operating expenses. Donations are tax deductible. Pet Posse and Little Kaya say thank you for your help.
Okay, I love the happy ending stories. That's Kaya. She decided she was going to go to Port Angeles, but You know, she was
Wow.
reunited, so that was awesome. Okay.
That's a long way to go.
I know. I don't understand it, but the main thing is she went home. Okay, so here this
yeah.
question is, I am new to composting and have chickens. How do I go about composting pine shaving bedding? Can I just mix it into potting soil for veggies that grow above ground?
Oh, don't do that, whatever you do, because you'll murder all your plants. Chicken manure is so hot. So I think it's actually the urine in the manure, but whatever the reason is, really high in salt. It's wonderful to use in your garden, and you don't want to let it just go to waste. I mean, we don't want to be throwing that into that garbage or something. So the key is you've got to compost it for at least 2 months, and I think 3 months is a lot better. And the thing is, it depends how you compost. So anytime, if you're going to make your own compost, you want at least 1 cubic square foot size composter. And so that's 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet. 3 feet tall, and the back is 3 foot, and the sides are 3 feet. Because if you don't have that big, it won't get hot enough. And you should buy yourself a composting thermometer. And so you throw the bedding and the chicken manure in there. But here's the thing. Typically, you need more brown than green. So typically, you need more green than brown, pardon me. But in this case, because chicken manure is so hot, I would say you want like 2 parts brown to 1 part green. So the chicken manure is the green. So what you got to do is get leaves, brown leaves. You could get wood chips. You could take newspaper and tear it up. Whatever you got to do. You want twice as much of the brown as you want the green. And then you want to turn that over now and then with a pitchfork or something. And then after it's been sitting in that bin, so I usually would think you'd want 2 bins. So one where after you've turned it over and got it hot and everything, you want it to get between 130 degrees and 150 degrees, that hot. And that'll cook out all the bad things in there. And then you let it sit for about 2 to 3 months. Now you have got this wonderful, rich stuff that should smell like soil. It'll improve your soil like crazy. You could dig that in. You can use it for a mulch. You can use it any way you want, and your plants will love you for that, and you'll have gotten rid of that darn chicken manure, because that's the worst thing about raising chickens is that our manure. You got to do something with it. It can get really stinky quick. And also the other thing is make sure the raccoons don't get it them either. But yeah.
So you got to mix it 1 part chicken manure with 2 parts of brown stuff, newspaper, leaves, stuff like that. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
130,
About,
130 to 150 degrees. I'm making notes so that if I ever have to go back and look at this information, I am, because I'm the neighborhood Ciscoe. Everyone keeps asking me these questions. Okay.
It's really funny because my sister-in-law was raising chickens, and one of her chickens jumped over her fence into her neighbor's garden. So she jumped over the fence to rescue the chicken, but she didn't realize the neighbor's garden, they were down in a kind of a gully, and so after she jumped the fence, it was another 6 feet down to the ground. She didn't get hurt, but she couldn't climb the fence back to get in her own garden, so she had to walk around the whole block holding this chicken. All the neighbors were looking out the window going, that is one weird woman over there walks around carrying a chicken. But anyway, okay, back to work here.
All right, so here is one about cherry trees. What is the best way to keep the birds out of the cherry tree, or do I just need to plan to share?
Plan to share. Nobody. Now, I had a friend who outwitted the birds in her cherry tree. story. But the work she went through. So first of all, her cherry tree was on a dwarfing rootstock. Anybody that buys any fruit trees, this is the biggest tip I can give you. Get it on as dwarfing a rootstock as you can get, because cherry trees can get 60 feet tall. What are you going to do? I mean, you're never going to even, you could barely see the cherries up there, you know?
Yeah.
So the more dwarfing rootstock you get, the easier it's going to be if you really want to eat the cherries, just to get to them. And then what she did was she tied in these bamboo stakes with tennis balls stuck on the end. So they kind of went in an array. And then she put a special big net over the cherry tree that is specially made. They use them to stop hail from wrecking cherry trees and other fruit trees over in eastern Washington. And she got a really big one that fit around her cherry tree. And you can buy these online now. They're better than bird netting. And not only that, it keeps all the fruit flies out of your cherries, everything. But it was such huge production to put this. She needed helpers to come put it on the tree, take it back off.
It sounds like it's better just to plan to share.
I think plan to share and just, you know, you hope you get a few. That's all.
That's
I got
right.
to say.
That's right. Okay, now here's one. We haven't talked about goats yet. I'm thinking about getting goats to keep the field clear. Is there anything that goats will not eat?
Well, it's really funny because right in Seattle, about 5 blocks from my house, I know a woman who raises goats like crazy, but she had to go buy some more property because she had more goats than they allow in Seattle on her property. But I also, I had a girlfriend years ago, and the girlfriend's mom's boyfriend raised goats over in Monroe. And we went over there in my car. I came out, we came out after visiting, and the goat was standing on my car eating my window wiper.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, and there were dents all over the hood. Oh, I was not a happy camper. Goats eat quite a bit, and if we're talking plants here, there are very few plants they won't eat. As we know, they use goats to get rid of blackberries, for instance. And they don't get rid of them, by the way. They just eat them to the ground.
Right.
The blackberries come back, so it's not 100% successful. But so I'll tell you what, because whenever I prune, my friends always go, give me whatever you're pruning that's not poison. So I'm not going to give her wisteria or calmia or jasmine or something like that. But basically, anything that's not poison, they'll eat. And I mean anything. And they'll probably eat the fence to get to the plant. Oh, my God.
Well,
you got to be brave.
Well, I remember it's been a few years ago, there was someone that had some goats that he rented them out to the Department of Transportation, and they would put them in a fenced-in area near the intersections of highways to get the weeds down. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So
They even rent, you get dogs with them, too.
yeah.
A lot of times they send these really great herding dogs along, and, you know, but it just knocks the blackberries down. But here's a tip that not many people know. If you mow blackberries every other week without fail, they're gone.
Oh, really?
You'll never have blackberries if you can mow them. I learned this by accident at Seattle University, but we cut down all these blackberries in a lot we owned, and they started growing back, and the city was on my case, so I sent a gardener out to mow them down just to give me time, because we didn't use any herbicides there. And lo and behold, the blackberries were gone by the end of summer. The only ones that were left were the ones we couldn't mow, they were in spots we couldn't mow. We just dug those out, got
Yeah.
rid of the blackberries 100%.
Wow. Okay. Well, it's 2 minutes to 10 right now. You're tuned to KSQM 91.5, and we have Ciscoe Morris with us with Gardening with Ciscoe. Let's do one more question, and then we'll do the top of the hour ID. Are there any veggie plants that dogs might get into that can make them sick?
Well, that's a really good question. Well, I don't think I have read they're not supposed to eat anything in the onion family, so it's not good if your dog eats garlic, onions, anything like that. But that's very unlikely that a dog would do that. I mean, dogs will do things you don't expect. But most animals don't like those plants with that really strong flavor. Like a deer will never eat an onion. Just won't do it. And so that would be one if you have a weird dog that just wants to chew everything on earth, you wouldn't want him chewing those onions and things. I'm not sure how poison they are. Not that bad, I don't think, but just the same. The other one is rhubarb leaves. We all know rhubarb leaves are
I
very
hadn't thought
poison.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I could see a pup doing that.
Yeah.
So make sure that maybe put a little chicken wire fence around your rhubarb or something so the pup can't get at it.
Yeah.
But those are about the only things I
Okay.
can think of that I'd be worried about.
Okay, well, let's do the top of the hour ID, and then we're just going to do a little known fact for Pet Week, and then we'll be back. We have 3 more questions to ask, so don't go anywhere, Ciscoe.
Okay.
You're tuned to KSQM 91.5 SQM.
It is straight up 10 o'clock. You're tuned to the Sassy Susan Show with, right now we're doing Gardening with Ciscoe, and we're going to hear, since it is Pet Weekend, we're going to do some little known facts.
It's a little known fact, and I'm your host, Robert Summers. To celebrate Pet Lovers Week, here's a little known fact. Cats are lactose intolerant. Like most mammals, cats lose the ability to digest dairy after infancy. Feeding milk to a cat can encourage stomach upset and diarrhea. Yuck. I'm Robert Summers, and that's a little known fact you can share with your friends.
Okay, we're back now. It's 1 minute past 10. You're tuned to KSQM 91.5, and we have 3 more questions to ask. We have a neighbor whose cat died after eating a poisoned mole. Is there some device that will chase the moles away? I've heard of one that flashes light and clicks or something.
Okay. I'm really glad that question got asked because there's no way that I would use any kind of poison for rats or moles in my garden, because what if your dog eats it after the animal ate the poison? So I don't mess with any of those kind of baits. But I got bad news here for the person that wrote this, and that is all of those mole chaser machines. So you could buy these things, and they do vibration. Most of them vibrate, and it's supposed to freak out the moles, and they're supposed to pack up their bags and move to your next door neighbor's yard. Well, they do work when you first put them in. It freaks out the moles. They go, I'm getting out of here. But pretty quick, they come back, and they go, well, that vibration, it's not as bad as I thought. That guy's got a lot of good worms to eat over there, So they come back. WSU did a test on every kind there was. Now, there might be some new ones. This was a while ago they did these tests. But they couldn't find one that really had lasting value, So I'd say save your money on those. And the other thing, it might drive your dog nuts to have that vibration going on all the time. So of all the non-lethal type things that I've ever found, because there are so many folk remedies for moles, you can't believe it. One is to put human hair down the mole hole, and the hair is supposed to get stuck between the mole's toes and drive them nuts.
That's a new one. I've never heard that one before.
Well, I was going to test that, but I was going to go to where I get my hair cut and say, you got a little extra hair. I could have my wife going, you're not spreading people's hair all over. And it might get the dogs things too. There's other folklores, but this is the one that I have found seems to work. Okay, now it's worked for me. That's all I can tell you. And I do get emails from people saying it does work, and that is mint. Moles hate mint. Now, you don't want to plant mint in your garden. If you do that, you're going to have mint everywhere so fast. It spreads like wildfire. I grow mint in a container, so I've got some to use. And this recipe is on my website in topics. It's also, I think it's in the tips section. It's also in my first book that I wrote called Ask Ciscoe. So you can get it, and you can get Ask Ciscoe from the library. There's an 8-week waiting list for my new book, Oh La La. So
my.
I don't know about that. Yeah, wow. But you take 2 handfuls of mint stems and leaves, and stems have to be pliable. So you stick those in your blender, add just enough water to make a slurry, and turn that baby on, make a slurry, put that in a big soup pan, half full of water, get it to a boil, and then that you could dilute that to make 6 gallons of mole blaster, as I call it. You pour that wherever the moles are working around the area, down the mole hole. Almost always the moles pack up their bags and do move to the next door neighbor's garden, but you have to be persistent. They're going to try and come back. If you're a good gardener, you have lots of worms for them to eat, all kinds of things like that. That's all they eat, basically, worms and grubs and things like that, not plants. And they'll keep trying to come back, so you got to do it a lot. But it works good, and your house smells divine when you're making this mint mole blaster.
I bet it would. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
that works pretty good.
Mint slurry. All right,
Yeah.
so what veggies are deer resistant? Are there any veggies that deer don't like?
It's really funny because the other day someone told me deer don't eat tomatoes. So I'm giving a garden talk and I go, somebody goes, deer eat tomatoes? And I said, nah, they don't eat them. Oh, man, it was like a riot almost. Everybody's like, are you kidding? They love tomatoes. They are too smart to eat the tomato leaves, which are poison. But they eat the tomatoes right off the tomato plant. So there's very, very few veggies that I could think of. You know, they're not going to eat rhubarb leaves, that's for sure, because they get smart. They eat them once, they get sick, and they go, I'm not ever eating that again. You know, the one thing is veggies that are underground, they're not going to eat your beets or your carrots, but they eat the top off.
Yeah.
So, you know, you got to hope they already got big enough before they get at them. I'd say they'll eat pretty much any veggie except for they won't eat onions and all those because they make the deer sick just like they would a dog. So deer don't like anything that's strong flavored. They never eat rosemary, thyme, what's the other one?
Basil?
Lavender. Yeah, lavender. They'll never touch.
Okay.
Basil. I don't think they eat basil either.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not positive about that one, but I'm pretty sure they wouldn't.
Huh.
So, yeah.
Okay, and then you can always put up that 6-foot fence that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Put up a fence. You know, they make this special fencing called deer fencing, and it looks like bird netting, but it's thicker and stronger, but you can see right through it. It's got pretty big gaps.
Yeah.
And so you could use that. The problem is they can get through it if they want to, but they got to be really hungry before they're going to break through that. So that would be it's very inexpensive, cheap way to keep deer out of your vegetable garden.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, here's one last question. It's not really I guess it was called in. It was on the phone. It's not related to pets, but we want to make sure that we get them all done. They say that apple seeds have to be black before the apple is ripe. Is that true on all species? And how do you prevent earwigs in an apple?
Okay, so yes, for all apples. Now, some apples are so sweet that even before they're ripe, you could probably eat them and they'll taste great. But they're not really ripe till the seeds turn black, as far as I know, on all kinds of apples. Now, if you're getting earwigs in your apple, earwigs are a very interesting insect. They are used for pest control. They eat aphids like crazy. The problem is, then they turn around and decide to eat our plants, and they'll eat the petals right off your dahlia flower. But if they're getting in your apple, it means something else got in your apple first. They never chew into an apple. A bird pecked it, it cracked for some reason. Something happened to that apple to open it up. Once that happened, the earwig went in. But I wouldn't worry too much about that. I mean, the damage is already done once the apple gets pecked.
The earwigs are opportunists, I guess you could say.
They're opportunists, yeah. Well, listen, if that's our last question, I want to tell one more real quick story. Okay, because I got a question the other day asking, how do you keep your dog out of your vegetable garden if you don't put up a fence? And so a pet expert gave me this advice. He said, stick a big, pound in a big stake in the middle, a pretty tall stake in the middle of your veggie garden. And then take fishing rod line, what do you call that? Fishing line.
Yeah, fishing line.
And radiate and put in stakes all around the veggie garden, and then tie the fishing line to the stake, or pound in, however you attach it to the stake, and then attach it to the little stakes that are all around the outside of the veggie garden. When the dog tries to go in the veggie garden, it can't see the fish line, but it feels it. It freaks it out, and it'll get out of there. So I did this with my 94-pound hound dog, Goldie. So I had a pretty big veggie garden, and I pounded this in the middle, put out the radiating lines, and Goldie went whipping right into the veggie garden like she had a habit of doing. She felt all that line, totally freaked out, started running around in circles, ended up pulling down the stake, dragging out every vegetable with the fishing line that was tangled all around her. Oh, yeah, that's a great idea. So don't do that one.
Don't do that. No. Well, is this something that we got?
Yeah, did you describe the pet picture?
Yeah, there was a pet picture that was sent in. Deb sent it in? This is a picture that Deb sent in that asked the questions about apple seeds, and it is a horse, a Shetland horse with a pulling a carriage behind. And being a horse lover myself, I think that this is just an adorable picture. And looking at the hooves of the horse, it almost looks like they have shoes on. So I wonder if this is a therapy animal that she takes into the different facilities, because I've seen where people do that. They take horses in. My dog at 123 pounds, that he's about the size of a miniature pony, but this would be so cool to take this therapy animal in. The shoes would kind of soften the sound of the hooves on the linoleum floor, but this is an awesome picture. So thank you to Deb for sending in this picture. It reminds me of when I had my horses. So, it looks like we've gotten through all of the questions for Pet Week. Right now it's 13 minutes past 10. And thank you so much for joining us today for Gardening with Ciscoe. Ciscoe Morris, you are the best. You are a fount of knowledge. And
Well, this was so fun today.
we always have fun here. That's
Oh, we
the
do.
bottom line. We leave our worries and cares at the door, and when we come into the studio, we just have fun, because that's what it's all about. So thanks so much for joining us, Ciscoe. I look forward to talking to you next Saturday. And if anyone has any questions, not pet related, this is pet weekend now, but if you have any gardening questions that you would like Ciscoe to address, just send them to office@ksqmfm.com, or you can call 360-681-0000 and tell us what the question is, and we'll type it up and we will ask Ciscoe next weekend. So you enjoy the rest of your day, Ciscoe. Give our best to Mary and all of your pups. And if anyone has any questions about the information that was discussed today, you can go to it. Your website is ciscoe.com? No.
Yep. Yes.
It is, okay.
CISCOE.com.
Ciscoe,
Yep.
Ciscoe. Remember the E, Ciscoe.com, and you will be able to see a picture of the plant of the week, which is appropriately enough the dogwood tree. But we will be talking to you next week. And so the song that your sending song that I have selected for you today, Ciscoe, is the McGuire Sisters with True Love, because gardening is your true love. Besides Mary, of course.
Oh la la, that's for sure.
Besides Mary. So we'll talk to you next week. And right now it's 15 minutes past 10. You're tuned to KSQM 91.5. Here's the McGuire Sisters, True Love. Talk to you next weekend, Ciscoe. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye everyone. Bye bye.